Nick Khan did an interview this week, Jim, that everyone has been talking about. Have you heard any of it? I know you've had a busy week.
I have heard that he has been praising Vince's triumphant return, and he's all on board with everything, even though he's also on record as not having been on board with everything about a month and a half ago or a month ago. That's what I know so far. Can you enlighten me to the details?
Well, I have not had a chance to listen to it, so we're going to hear some of these clips. Jace Nakarado or Jay Sharknado has put together a list here. So let's go to this. This is from the Bill Simmons podcast. This first audio clip, Jim, is Nick Khan on Vince's return and his role in the middle of it. I think that's what this is. Let's go to this.
So let's unwind this. Vince McMahon steps down a year ago. All of these revelations about different NDAs from years ago goes in the Wall Street Journal. He steps down and it seems like he's gone. Then he goes on SmackDown, and just watching it from afar, the whole thing seemed insane. It was like, is this guy stepping down or not? Why is he on a show? Is he still around? People are wondering if...
That's not Nick Khan, by the way. That's Bill Simmons asking the question.
Yes.
If it's a work. And now you have 10 months later, it really is starting to feel like the real life version of HBO's Succession, where Vince is now, he did what seemed to be from afar like a board coup d'etat. Stephanie stepped down. There were rumors you're going to sell to Saudi Arabia, which I never believed. But from we're watching this afar, this seems insane. What is it like to be in the middle of this? Does it seem less insane? What are the misnomers? Like how real is all of this?
So I, from the inside, it's not that insane to me, but it's also, again, the word insider, when you're on the inside, you sort of see things that might be coming and know what might be coming. My thought has always been there's only one boss at WWE and it ain't me. Vince is obviously the founder, creator of the company. He's also the controlling shareholder, which is, that's not a work term.
Right.
That's a legal term of art. So I think it was always my point of view, always Stephanie's point of view. At some point, he would come back. I think the way that he played it to me was smart, Bill, in that he went away for 5-6 months, which people, meaning the audience, seems to like when somebody does that. And he came back and took
Wait, stop. Did he just almost come out and say, how can I miss you when you won't go away?
His company is the control shareholder. So it is the public's company, as a publicly traded company, but with that controlling share, gave him a lot of authority and he used it. And I applaud him for doing so.
All right, let's stop it there.
I applaud him for being a ruthless businessman and outmaneuvering all of us. Right? Is basically what he just said there?
That's basically what he just said. Hey, first of all, if he's the founder, does that mean the company history goes back to 1980 or 1982? Because if he's the founder, it doesn't go back to whatever they want to pretend.
Well, Nick Khan doesn't know what the fuck Vince Sr. did, and he's never heard of Toots Mondt, the son of a bitch.
But I'm saying they're all doing that now. That's the new terminology around Vince. He's the founder of WWE.
That's several things. Number one, that's to make it sound even more important that he's back, and that why they agree with that he's back, and also because in their minds he did found this. They don't consider previous wrestling promotions to be anything comparable to the juggernaut that is the WWE. So they're building him up, and they're probably going to add benefactor by next week, and then after that it'll be and the philanthropic benefacting founder is making him sound more important because he's taking over.
Well, here's some more audio on Nick Khan, or from Nick Khan, talking about Vince.
So, I mean,
that's Bill Simmons again.
Especially some of the stuff in the NDAs, many people would say he shouldn't come back. That should be it. He should leave. When he owns the company, it's basically up to him. Like, you can have as much public pressure as you want, but it's his company. The reason that he wouldn't come back is if he felt like it would be hurting the value of the company, the prestige of the company, people's perception of whether they even want to be a fan of the company anymore. So why did he come back? Because it does seem like it hurts the company.
Well, so here's what I'd say. You and I had a conversation. I don't remember the exact time frame, But whenever the Ray Rice stuff happened in the NFL 8-10 years ago, whatever that was, and there were conversations at that point, not your point of view, not my point of view, that, oh, is Roger Goodell going to resign? If you remember, he had a lot of heat on.
Yeah.
And I think you and I both concluded to each other, well, no advertiser has fled. Ratings aren't down. The product seems to continue to build. Why would he resign? Why would he do that? So I think that's more, keep in mind, I've lived in Los Angeles. I think, how long have you been in LA now, Bill?
20 years.
So I've been here since 2000. So 22, 23 years. Sometimes I think it's just a 3-mile radius of LA thing. Hey, step down and, you have to sort of be punished for it.
Vince is in Stanford.
That way. So I think for somebody like Vince, and by the way, you and he are two different people, but you're both founder CEOs. And I think founder CEOs different than regular CEOs. So consider me for this moment in time a regular CEO. There's something about the founder CEO that sees the vision, sort of sees the future, can get there a moment in time before others can, and then everyone else catches up. So and again, these were.
Let me just stop for a second and just say, I hate agents. We all need them at times, but I hate agents.
Whatever your private frustrations may have been at prior employers while you were trying to build something great, which Grantland was great and The Ringer is great. I think it's the same thing for Vince as a founder CEO. It's his company. So to me, WWE's Vince, Vince is WWE, and, we're going to do the best we can to keep building the company.
Vince is WWE. I want to remind you, he was one of the board of directors who voted against Vince coming back before he voted for him to come back, before he flip-flopped on Vince.
Before the arrows hit the first guys on the turrets at the fort and they fell over and the rest of the people inside said, maybe we ought to welcome them with open arms.
He said something really interesting because it could create a legal issue, actually. He said that he did the right thing and he left until the heat died down, which isn't what they said to shareholders.
Yeah. He said the truth out loud kind of there, didn't he?
You can't just do that. It's a publicly traded company.
Apparently they can.
Well, they can. Vince gets away with everything. Teflon Vince. What do you think of Nick Khan so far?
Well, he's very smooth, and he was absolutely for it ever since he decided to be for it, since he was against it. What's he going to say? Then Vince can fire him. We've now established Vince can do anything Vince wants to do, so he's going to have to be, it's not even his fault, but boy, he's awful slick, and he has a great voice for saying it, doesn't he? So now he could say the same thing Ole Anderson would say to you. You'd want to fight Ole, and you'd fucking take Nick out for dinner.
All right, well, let's get some more audio. Here's Bill Simmons asking Khan to walk him through the process of when Vince stepped down. Let's go to this.
Can you walk me back to when he stepped down initially?
Yeah.
And the board, basically, it seemed like from afar, forced him to step down. Is that accurate?
I didn't see it as a force. I think saw sort of the tonnage of things that were coming at him and us. And he thought, one thing he's always said, and you know this as a longtime fan, I'm a longtime fan also, he'll do whatever's best for business. And I think at that moment, whether it's bringing the Ultimate Warrior back 20 plus years ago or whatever that might be, I think at that moment in time, he saw what's best for business was for him to step away for a while. So he did. And he really did step away. So there was no, hey, why are you doing this? Or I wouldn't do it that way. It was, in my opinion, total freedom. To Stephanie, myself, and to Triple H on the creative side. It's only been a week, but he really, I believe what he said publicly about, hey, I'm here to engage in strategic alternatives and the media rights. So far, the engagement has been that and other board issues. There's
not the behind the scenes wrestling stuff.
Zero.
Sports entertainment, any of that.
Zero. None. And by the way, I made it a point, as did others, to see him once a month or so while he was sitting out. I think those things are important, and it's no different, in my opinion, than when other mutual friends of ours who have gone through hard times professionally, that's when they sort of need to hear from folks most that, hey, you haven't forgotten about them and you're appreciative of them and all of those things. So I think in staying in contact that way, which was mostly social and personal, There was never a moment of, no, do it this way or do it that way. It just didn't happen.
All right. Well,
so poor put upon Vince, who had to go sit at home in his mansion just because he paid out $20 million for pussy. And I thought it was important that we not forget about him. And if we make sure that he knows that we're still there for him when he comes back and marches in to take back the company.
And once I realized he still had all the stock, I said, I'm going to pay him a visit once a month and just say, hey, here's your favorite candy. And I also got you sandwiches. And meet these paralegals I just ran into on the way here.
They were lined up at the guard shack, but I got them passed on through.
You know what, Jace? I'm looking at the notes here. He put it here. Brandon Thurston tweeted out, I guess it refers to the next thing. He says it again. Chances seem low. There's a real negative consequence here, but I wouldn't be surprised if the comment is pointed to in a future shareholder complaint or encourages SEC scrutiny, as it could be claimed the company knew Vince's exit was not what they said it was in disclosures. Bingo. It's the same thought I had, but I guess Nick Khan says more about it here. Let's hear this.
Were you surprised that he stepped down?
I was surprised in the moment. But once I thought about it for a couple of days, it made total sense to me. I wouldn't say it caught me off guard because, again, we were on the inside sort of feeling a bit of the pressure that was going on. So it certainly seemed, again, the right thing at the right time. Definitely surprised in the moment. After I digested it, it made total sense.
Were you surprised that he started to inch his way back?
No. That's Vince.
Yeah.
Anyone who knows him who thought with a tweet, because I think he tweeted, hey, I'm 77 now, time for me to call it a day or something to that effect, when he stepped down. Anyone who believed that was permanent doesn't know him. That was never going to happen. But I'm appreciative of the fact that he gave it the 5-6 months, let the dust settle a little bit, and then coming back in the way that he's come back.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present my final piece of evidence.
That's exactly, he said it earlier, kind of, but there he just laid it out.
Yeah, he just clarified it. Yeah, we knew it wasn't going to be long. We just had to let the heat die down. Okay. But again, what else is he going to say? Then he'll just get fired too.
Why do the interview? I mean, not that it's the most scandalous, and I mean, we're talking about it here, but by and large, no one gives a shit. But what advantage is there for him, Nick Khan, the CEO who doesn't really have a public presence, to do this interview here? Is it to build up WWE's brand with people who listen to a sports podcast as opposed to a wrestling podcast? What do you think it is?
Well, maybe it's maybe he thought he was trying to mitigate any backlash from this by acting, nothing to see here, folks. We're calm. Everything's, continuing as normal. Of course, it was expected that this would happen. It's not panic. Maybe that's what he was thinking, and he went too far in the other direction. Yeah, we knew it all along.
Here's the next question. How much did Vince coming back have to do with the company doing well without him?
How much of him wanting to come back had to do with the fact that the company did really well without him? I mean, you guys had a little bit of a resurgence creatively. I think in the wrestling community, people were super pleased with some of the moves and some of the pushes, and kind of felt like the snow globe just got shook. And in a good way, you flipped it where AEW had all this momentum, and then all of a sudden by the end of last year, it felt like WWE had a lot of the momentum. And do you think that bothered him?
I don't think so. What do you think?
I think it bothered him.
Tell me.
I do. I think when you've created something, and especially something you spent 50 years of your life on, and you were the integral force of every decision that was ever made, and then all of a sudden you're out of it, there's part of you that wants to think, I was super important. Like this should kind of go downhill, and it didn't. It was the opposite. I think that's hard to deal with.
I get it. I think, again, having been on the inside, and keep in mind, as a publicly traded company, if there was an official succession plan, that would have had to be filed, a long time ago.
Yeah.
I think the succession plan in his mind is the one that he put in place when he stepped down, which was Paul Triple H runs creative and Stephanie and I, co-run or help to run the company, if you will, with Steph, his daughter, as the chairwoman. So to me, I never got a sense from him of any sort of bitterness or anything like that. He seemed for the first month of his hiatus thrilled. And if you think about it, even from your own career as an outside observer of it, how hard you've worked, a month off would be fucking amazing. Right. I think you went to Italy, whatever it was, the things that we all wish we could do while we're in the mix of, let's say, quote unquote, empire building.
Yeah.
First month was amazing.
I got to stop for a second. I'm kind of getting sick of Nick Khan. We have more to listen to, but the way he talks, I don't know if slimy's the word, but.
No, smooth, slick. I'd go smooth and slick. He's not all the way into friendly Freddy slimy.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right, let's go back to Slick. Slick Nick.
Slick Nick.
I think by month 5, he was starting to get ready to return. And I think the strategic alternative process is a real one. I think he's hyped for it. I haven't seen any sort of heat from him towards anybody who's at WWE with WWE. There's no commentary from him.
Yeah, it's because Stephanie resigned. So you could technically say I haven't seen any heat with him and anyone at WWE because his daughter went home.
Certainly to me, and I've been in touch with him, as you might imagine, a lot in the past week. There's no, why did, Paul and you hire this, or why did Steph and you do that? There's been none of that.
Yeah, because he already had Bruce to talk to. Tell me what they did. And then he found out, and now he's back. What do you think of it so far, Jim?
Well, I will agree. No, it's ridiculous. The concept that Vince saw the company was doing better or even as good without him. I was around Vince long enough. Again, it's been a long time and his mind has changed somewhat. But no, there's been no change in business that would be large enough in any increment to get Vince McMahon's attention. Just because the fans said, oh, we like the creative better, or the ratings are up slightly, or maybe the house show tickets have bumped up a little bit. And obviously, he's going to attribute a lot of that to Cena on that particular program and other things. But nevertheless, that hasn't been enough to even get Vince's attention as an increase that you should be proud of, I'm pretty sure. Nor does he give a fuck that anybody's happy that any of the talent that he wanted to let go, they brought back. That's small potatoes to he is, as we've mentioned, he's either gotten information or come to believe on his own that they need to do this sale quickly, along with starting the rights fee thing, because it may not turn out the way they want. And he wants to maximize what they get while they can get it. So that's probably, it probably wasn't his plan when he stepped down, because he didn't know he was going to step down. All that stuff blew up when people heard about it. Maybe he was discussing this plan, and that's why he got stooged, because somebody wasn't on board with it. But nevertheless, he sitting out to let the heat die down. He either got or furthered this idea, and it has absolutely, in his mind, nothing, I am sure, to do with whether or not the fans are happy to see people back or there's been a slight uptick in business. We're talking about, instead of a slight uptick, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars a year difference in what they might get versus what he thinks they may get if he does this now the way he's doing it. That's where he's at mentally, I'm pretty goddamn sure.
Here's Nick Khan being asked about the board shakeups and the role of the board, which, by the way, he's a member of.
At the same time, like, there was some pretty dramatic board shakeup stuff. He brought back Michelle and George, who he fired a few years ago. A couple people left the board. Why did people leave the board, and why did he feel like he had to do that? Explain the business piece of that to me.
I think from the business point of view, I think the George and Michelle thing, WWE, as you know, is a unique product.
Yeah.
And I think it's one thing that you and I have bonded over the years is that you are a fan, I was a fan, I am a fan. And it's sort of like this insider thing. So I think with George and Michelle, who I have nothing but good history with, keep in mind, they left the company, I think 8 or 9 months before I joined the company. So this was not a, hey, let's bring me in while he moves others out. I think it was a deliberate process by him over that course of 8 to 9 months to figure out who he wanted to try to have in the seat. But they know the company and they're insiders and there's a shorthand with them. So I think as he engages in this, potential transaction, to have folks there that know the company, that know, hey, maybe certain things that happened in the past shouldn't have happened, or in a modern day point of reference culture, which I always try to look at these things from, Bill, that, hey, certain things that were acceptable years ago aren't acceptable now. I think over time you can evolve with these things, and the modern day rules should apply to modern day. I don't think it should apply to the past.
Let's stop it there for a moment.
What
do you say about that?
There was no real direct rational reason for him to segue into, well, things that used to fly don't fly anymore, when he's talking about Vince brought back 2 executives that were there 3 years ago. Is there a massive cultural difference between 2023 and 2020 as far as what used to fly and doesn't fly? So that was not, but he had to get that in there somewhere as if to say, well, back in the 70s, Vince could have lined all these paralegals up against a wall and just fucking cornholed them with no repercussions whatsoever, but you can't do it anymore. Is that what that is?
When are they bringing Johnny Ace back?
Boy, well, I don't know. I think that barn door may be closed on that particular sway-backed mule, but go ahead with jolly old Saint Nick.
All right, counter.
Please.
It seemed like he wanted to get more of the board on his side, so he moved out the 3 people probably who voted against him and moved in a couple of people that he liked. So what is the business reason to do that? If he's already has the controlling stake, why does he need a more favorable board to him? Or am I reading that wrong?
So I think it's a nuanced thing on the sales process.
I think it's an annoyance thing.
You have to look at successful business people like Saddam Hussein and Vladimir Putin and how they take control of their property and do things.
Traditionally, so if you're looking at, and I'm sure you are, the News Corp Fox potential remerger, you've seen that a special committee of the independent board has been assigned to oversee that process and to determine whether that's what's best for the shareholders. This is different. With the controlling shareholder, Vince is going to run that process. So to have board members in who understood that with the controlling shareholder, this is going to be the way it is, and people who would embrace that, I think ultimately that was the determining factor.
But if Vince just said, I'm going to sell WWE to anybody, like I'm going to sell to Netflix tomorrow, couldn't he just do it? Does the board ultimately have any say? That's the part I don't get. If he's the controlling stake, what does the board even matter? Why even have a board?
Great question.
And by the way, to your point on, hey, I'm paraphrasing here, but it seems like he got friendlier, board members in last week or whenever that was. I think the misperception always was that this board 6 months ago, 6 years ago, hey, they were just being puppeteered by Vince. Was not the case. As you saw it this summer, it was a very real board. It was a very competent board. I believe George.
Wait, hold on. He's using the example of the guys they kicked out.
Yes, that's why they had to get rid of it, because it was a real competent board. So then 2 quit and 3 were fired, and Vince replaced the 3 with 3 that he wanted, and now it's a very incompetent board.
You saw how well it functioned over the summer without Vince, so we decided to switch things up a little bit and give him complete
change
control.
half of it.
George and Michelle, obviously real, more than competent people who understand this process. But no, my understanding is even as the controlling shareholder, as long as it's an unaligned, fair process, if you will, the controlling shareholder can control it. If there was some handshake deal or he only wanted to declare, hey, I'm a buyer, not a seller, I'm going to buy out the other shares with some sort of financial partner, then it would be the board controlling that process. So that's not what he appears to be looking to do.
Well, there's Nick Khan's comments about, what was he commenting on? The board of directors, what they actually do, and Vince's role in replacing everyone who wouldn't go along with everything he wanted to do with people who would, which is what happened.
Yes. But it sounded great when Nick talked about it. I'd like to go through all that myself. It sounds like so much fun.
How would you feel about Nick Khan representing you as an agent?
Boy, I'll tell you what, he is a silver-tongued devil, as they used to say. I can see where if he was on your side, he might get you a good deal. But at this point, he's having to make some chicken salad out of chicken shit with what he's got to work with, as far as admitting that, yeah, Vince came back and, like Cartman, he's going to do what he wants.
He's obviously painting a very rosy red picture about what's going on over there. Everything sounds like it's on the up and up, and there's not been any problems with the founder there or not there or taking over the board or whoever's on the board. Just everything is lovely. But what about Stephanie? Let's go to this.
Well, so you go back where it's Triple H, who seemed like he was running everything creatively, or at least was a huge force. And he gets kind of shoved to the side. He had some health issues, to be fair. But I think people were surprised. NXT, just Triple H's baby. That kind of basically gets the plug pulled out of it. It's still going, but it's not nearly the same. I thought it had so much more momentum 4 or 5 years ago. And Stephanie leaves a year ago, or it takes us, she's going to be a mom and the whole thing. And then Vince steps down, and all of a sudden, Paul and Stephanie are back, and you're running it, and things are going well. And now Vince is back, and Stephanie steps down. This is hard to keep track of. I understand. So was Stephanie's whole thing, I care about this company. I care about my father. I need to help out? Or why did she step down? I still don't get that part.
So two things on that. Number one, it's important to anyone listening to this, if you're going to join a family business and you're not inside the family, as I am not inside the family, stay out of the family business part.
Fair.
Right. That's rule number one. And by the way, I know you're a fan of the show Succession.
Yes.
You reference it. So am I. I was saying this to my wife this weekend. When you watch that show and you see all of the family members and everything that goes on, and you see the outsiders in the company, and you look at those outsiders, the non-family members, you say, what an idiot. Why are you working there? I guess that would be me.
You'd be like the lawyer who got involved with the Culkin character.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Not Jerry.
Yeah.
Right. Not Jerry.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking, but who's, yeah.
Do you watch that show on HBO?
I've not sound. It's completely unknown to me.
Are you Jerry? Who's Jerry?
Who's Jerry?
I know what you're talking about.
Right. So to me, that's obviously, on a side, but I don't get involved in the family business. That is rule number one. Just as if you were in some dispute with a family member.
But when you say family business, you're talking like family stuff, not actual business.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Sorry. I don't get in the family side of the family business. It's not my purview. I don't insert myself. I don't try to insert myself. I like to consider myself, instead of a pot stirrer, someone who more simmers the pot with these things. So that's number one.
Well, I'll smoke the pot. He says he doesn't get involved with family stuff. The question is about why Stephanie stepped down. Was that a family thing, or was that okay, I've done my time, I'm leaving?
Well, no, that was again a going around his elbow to get to his wrist. He managed to talk for about 2 minutes there without actually even mentioning Stephanie's name or answering the question. But he did indicate that it was a family interaction that it was best he stay out of.
Well, here's more from Nick Khan and Bill Simmons on Stephanie.
Well, it seemed like for a few months there, she was going around, she was meeting with a bunch of people, and it was kind of the make everything okay again tour with a whole bunch of different
See
sponsors,
how you still have your ear to the ground on these things.
Yeah, but she was just, things got a little crazy there, but we're here to right the ship. And when I heard that, I was like, Vince isn't coming back if they're doing this. If she's going around and meeting all these leaders and different people, this means to me that this is a new era of the company. But now it's an old era of the company again. Do you think Vince learned any lessons over this time, or are we just going back to where we were a year ago?
Well, I don't think so. I think Vince is really happy where the company's at. Certainly that's what he's conveyed to me. Keep in mind.
So his lesson is, I'm going to stay out of this and just concentrate on the sale.
Yeah, what he said to me and what I've certainly experienced is, hey, I'm 77 now. I want to explore all strategic alternatives. Is there a sale out there? Is there a merger out there? What would make sense most for the company? Which is why when that Saudi thing we referenced earlier, and we have a great relationship.
No, we didn't reference that yet.
We didn't talk Saudi. I thought you mentioned
we talked right
quickly.
before the pod. Yeah. There's a fake story last week.
Fake. 100% fake, 100% made up, saying that there was an imminent transaction or whatever it was. Totally false.
That you were going to sell basically privately to some Saudi money group. And that was going to be how this ended. It seemed, and then I checked the person who had and they had like 5,500 followers. Yeah. But then the way the world works this time in 2023, people just ran with it for the next 18 hours.
Yeah, it was absurd. It was nuts. And by the way, that person subsequently took down that tweet.
Right.
Because again, when I'm saying 100% false, it was 100% false. So
I mean 100%. Like if you leave it up, we're going to cut off your head. It's 100% false. Don't report on the Saudi deal.
In this process, he's there to oversee it. It's his controlling share. I'm involved in it. Triple H is involved in it. The board's obviously involved in it. Triple H being on the board, as I have the good fortune of being as well. And we're going to see how it plays out. It should not be a lengthy process.
Once again, the question that hasn't been asked is, why did you vote against him coming back? Because he was on the board of directors.
Right.
That's the question that has not been
voted
asked.
Against Vince before they voted for Vince.
That's
after
right.
the shakeup. But otherwise, the Nick Khan, his voice is very soothing. As a matter of fact, they ought to call him Dr. Somnambulism. I'm starting to get sleepy.
Well, Jim, here's Nick Khan talking about if Vince will be on camera anytime soon.
Oh.
Are there plans for Vince to be on camera and involved in any plots?
Not at this moment.
Not at this moment.
No is the answer.
That's like a non-denial denial.
No is the answer to that question. Could it change in a few months? Sure, it could change, but that would be Paul and Vince, being on the same page about it. I don't see it right now.
It would only change if Paul and Vince were on the same page, not if Vince decided, I'm going to do whatever I want. I don't give a shit who's running any division here.
Well, besides that, I liked it the way he worded it. Is Vince going to be in on any plots? And Nick should have said, no, not any more than the one he's already involved in.
Here is the question about if Vince wanted to sell the company or the whole thing or just a piece of it.
What's the sale process without telling me too much? Or because I know you have some restrictions, but
Sure.
You have a bunch of suitors. You have a price in your head. Vince obviously wants to sell. I actually, sidebar question. Why does Vince want to sell? Is it an age thing? Is it like, what am I going to do? But at the end, I'm looking at the finish line a little bit here. Why not? Maybe this will be my final victory lap. Why sell now out of all times?
I think he's ready. I can't describe it as anything more than that after the last 5 months. And keep in mind, again, you engaged in empire building. You're still engaged in empire building. At a certain point, it's like, okay, how much more of this empire am I going to build? We continue to build it. He continued to build it until he stepped down 5 months or so ago. But I think in looking at a world of consolidation, the sort of, standalone enterprise that owns 99% of its intellectual property.
Yeah.
With the media rights.
And a library and media rights.
A library, right? With the media rights coming up in October of 24, which means the process starts in a few months on that. Certainly to go lock in a bunch of long-term deals and then to sell or try to sell to everybody doesn't make sense. The timing was now. So even if you look at our annual shareholders.
So you're saying you want to sell the company and then you do the deals. The new person that comes in, that would be their first order of the business, would be to bang out the new 2024 media right deals.
That's the goal, unless one of the media conglomerates ends up buying it directly.
Right.
Right. Then they certainly wouldn't want it encumbered by long-term media rights deals elsewhere.
So
let's stop there, because that kind of goes into what we talked about before with the idea that one of these companies that buys it is one of the ones that already has one of the media deals. So you can kind of cut off whatever, $2.5 billion over a few years that won't be in the company coffers because the owner will not be making that money. What do you think about what he's saying about the timing and about basically we got to rush and do this right now before the next deal?
Well, I mean, that's what we've been saying. And I think that's obviously pretty much what they're doing. And the thing is, you made the point, we've talked about it, that, okay, if I am paying you for a program that you produced to put on my network, then yes, in some respect, it is a good idea for me, instead of paying you $1 billion for the next 5 years, I just pay you a couple $1 billion for the whole goddamn thing from start to finish. Except then, am I going to continue to pay myself the rights fees that the company that you just sold me was getting? And then I've saved the money I was going to spend, but I've spent a lot more money, and it's on a company that's taking in a lot less money because I'm not paying it anymore. So this shit's complicated.
And I just read that Crazy Eddie book, so I'm expecting the new owners to open the books and be like, oh, shit.
Yeah,
Where's Vince?
as long as they don't pay Connecticut sales tax, they might be all right.
So for people listening, you have the streamers, all the usual suspects. You have a place like Endeavor, which has already bought UFC and figured out how to mine that out.
Well, I'll tell you what, they're going to just talk for a little bit more about who could potentially buy it and Vince wanting to sell. You've gotten the gist of it. There's a few other big things we got to play before we wrap this up. Well, Jim, going back to something we talked about earlier in the show, the breaking news from the Wall Street Journal, here's Nick Khan earlier this week talking about Rita Chatterton.
And it looks like we should mention the Rita Chatterton possible lawsuit, or it is a lawsuit, or Vince has to deal with that. Do you feel like suitors are going to wait to see how that plays out and how bad that's going to be? And is there going to be more details like that coming out, or are they just plowing ahead?
I think everyone's just plowing ahead. You just move forward, right? Because in all of these businesses, there's never a clean, clear path.
Yeah.
There's always some encumbrance, something in the way, some hurdle in the way that you have to get around or get through. So I see that like I would any other item like it.
Well, it sounds like they got through the hurdle earlier today.
Yeah, the hurdle was flattened before he did this interview, and he knew that already.
What a way to phrase it, though. What do you think about the boss being accused of rape? Well, it's just one of those things. You get past it.
In business, there's these hurdles that we. I mean, he's probably, and also, to be honest and fair to Mr. Khan, he's probably just looking at it like a lawsuit, because you get 1 million of them in the big businesses he's involved in. He doesn't give a fuck what the origination of it was. He wasn't even there.
Well, Jim, here's something that a lot of people are talking about. Nick Khan talking about Tony Khan and AEW.
So one recurring theme with Vince's career was that he kept having a challenger, or there kept being these moments where it seemed like things might fall apart and then they didn't. And in the last couple of years, you had AEW. They come in as probably the most polished challenger you guys have had in 20 years. They had deep pockets, a TV station attached to them, and somebody in Tony Khan running their business who was a real wrestling fan, who really dipped into the history of wrestling in a bunch of different ways with some of the angles, and realized that he had to be a little bit of a different competitor to you versus like what some other people have done, which is either get older wrestlers and try to compete with you that way, or basically just do what WCW did, which was just, we're going to do the same thing as you. We're just going to try to spend more money to do it better. They kind of countered it a little bit. They grabbed some ECW pieces and some indie wrestling things and some All Japan, all this stuff. And it seemed like a real competitor. It seemed like they had, at least in the wrestling.
This guy sounds like he knows just enough to be dangerous.
I got to say, he's been doing a good job with this interview, Bill Simmons, but where's the All Japan influence on AEW? I'd like to know. I'll watch that segment.
Community of the nerds and the people who love the 5-star matches, all that stuff, they kind of tapped into that. At what point did you feel like they were a threat?
Well, how do you think they're doing now?
Not as well.
Right. I think a couple things. I've never met the guy.
Although I think they're having a better 2023 than 22. But anyway, go ahead.
I think I've never met the kid. Tony Khan seems like a nice kid to me. I don't know him. I have met his dad, who randomly I sat next to at some like sports business luncheon that Stephanie and I went to 1.5 years or so ago. I thought the dad was as impressive as could be. I think there was a piece on him in the New York Times a year or so prior to that. Self-made billionaire, I believe Pakistani immigrant, could not be more impressed with him. I like the pivots. I'm not as big of an NFL fan as you are. I don't follow it the way you do. But I like the pivots he made. Make a mistake in hiring a certain coach a couple years ago, get out of that mistake, figure it out again.
Yeah.
So could not be more impressed with the dad. He made his money in the auto parts business, I believe. So he knows that inside out. I don't believe he's involved on the wrestling side of the business. I'm talking about storylines outside of financing it.
No, he's got just the pockets.
Yeah, he has the pockets, and that's awesome. And I'm sure his kid appreciates it. But I was never threatened by that. But I tend not to be threatened. I don't feel threatened by anyone on anything. It's just not how I do business. So I don't mean like,
No, I got you.
Right. If some guy came up to me with a rattlesnake in my face, yeah, I guess I'd feel threatened by that. But
let me stop for a second here. Very complimentary of Shad Khan. He has called Tony Khan the kid
a
kid.
Or his kid.
And that's it. And if you can't hear the disrespect there, I mean, it's quite obvious.
Well, and he takes Shad Khan legitimately, incredibly, as a self-made billionaire and a big businessman in other businesses and the sports teams and whatever. And as I believe I've said before, Tony's his own worst enemy. They have never in that office, and rightfully so, taken Tony Khan seriously as a wizard of high finance and big business.
I think similar to you, Bill, I've never seen you scared. I just don't think you see people that way. I don't think when you were on your rise as primarily a writer at that time, I think you probably put targets on certain people who you thought held an esteemed position who didn't deserve that position.
Yeah.
And then you overtook them with your work. But it all came down to your work, not their work. So for me, and I know I've used the quote before, it's that Jimmy Iovine, I think it's at the end of that Dr. Dre, Jimmy Iovine documentary on HBO, where he says, you know, in your career, you got to be like a horse. A horse, you put blinders on it. Why do you put blinders on it? Horse looks to the left, looks to the right, stumbles, it breaks its leg, and you know what happens after that. I've always looked at business the same way. I don't care what anyone else is doing. I care what we're doing. And as long as we can have the best product on with the best talent and the best writers, I think we're going to be in good shape.
Well, let's stop it there, and that'll be the last audio clip we play from Nick Khan. What do you think of his thoughts about AEW, competition, the Khan family?
Well, again, he went around his elbow to get to his wrist, and a lot of pleasant platitudes there and everything. But it is true, they pay attention to what other companies are doing, but they primarily focus on their own shit in a situation like this. And, of course, he's going to say we got the best writers and the best talent, blah, blah, blah. But I think they adjusted, and I've said this before, they adjusted their opinion or assessment of AEW and or Tony Khan and or the threat to them very shortly after the AEW television program went on the air, and they started seeing what they were dealing with and how it was coming together. And they determined at that point that he was going to be an annoyance in going after some of the same talent or paying enough money that it's going to cause them to have to bid a little bit more for things or whatever the fuck, but that it wasn't going to be anywhere near the fight of their life. And they've given, the WWE has given themselves more trouble over the last 3 years than AEW has, either through the bad booking or Vince's fucking public shenanigans. So I think that's what Nick Khan is, you know, referring to in very thin veiled threats is what I'm trying to say, that they don't take Tony Khan seriously, and they're talking about billions of dollars in a worldwide global business and not, you know, he has all the respect in the world for the guy's dad, but the guy's dad is giving the kids some money to play with, and that's what they've got.
Tony Khan in the past has had several moments, I think, during one of the media scrums, maybe two of them, where obviously it got to him some of the things between WWE and AEW. And he is, I think the quote was, "I'm not Jim Crockett, I have a whole lot more money."
Yeah. they've said something or given him some impression that he's not happy with them because he knows they're not taking him seriously. But at the same time, comments like that and a lot of the way he behaves in public and melts down and just the product. Yeah, if you've got $100 million to spend, you can make $100 million, but you can't start a global juggernaut that will be worth $6 billion and be dealing with all these people in 3 years of using mostly fucking indie-rific fucking guys and occasionally some lucky signings.
The big question is, and has been for a while, but if Shad Khan hears this interview, because again, Shad Khan owns an NFL team, Bill Simmons is a pretty big deal in terms of sports journalism, I guess I'll call it. If he hears this interview, what does he think about, yeah, I really have a lot of respect for this guy, and here's why. And it's, everything he said about Shad Khan are things that everyone would respect about someone. But the kid. When you hear that and you know that you're financing your son, just the way he said it, very harshly, what do you think when you hear that?
It sounds like that Tony has done a good enough job of making back enough of what he spent that his dad is still in the range of, hey, I'm letting him have fun with his inheritance, while I'm still alive and can see it. That was his quote a few years ago. And it's not like that, this guy, his net worth, as we mentioned, we look it up, give or take several $100 million, I'm sure, for accuracy, but it's worth technically more than the WWE is worth, so he can afford to play with some money, but he can't afford to liquidate 3/4 of what he has to, purchase the WWE for cash. And I don't know that he would still want to, Shad, that is, get an investor or any partners and try to take that step just because his son has become enamored with wrestling. So, again, but I understand that Nick Khan would, and he probably wants to talk nice to Shad Khan because Shad Khan is still a billionaire and owns a football team and whatever the fuck else they own across the pond, and might want to do some business at some point on something completely unrelated because Nick Khan's that big Hollywood wheeler and dealer, but he doesn't have to impress Tony because at this point that would be a step down. Nick Khan is a bigger deal in the world these days than Tony Khan is. Just we know Tony because we're all wrapped up in the wrestling. Nick Khan talks to movie stars and shit.
Well, there it is. What are your final thoughts on Nick Khan?
Once again, very smooth and talks a lot and says nothing, but without cussing. That's very, very admirable.
He said a lot in the things that he didn't say, and some of the things he alluded to, which we'll see if anyone else reacts to.
See if you can say a few things and take very short time to do it.
Or take a very long time to do it.